is it, Bones? I don't know, Jim. I'm a doctor, not a taxidermist. And gags to that effect. Thank you, Phil, for the gift of the rather lovely Build-A-Bear Star Trek 50th Anniversary Teddy. This was handed to me in Cosmic Toys this weekend in a plastic bag. I got it out not having any clues to its Star Trek origins, and so was deeply puzzled for a good 30 seconds before somebody suggested that I have a look at the badge on its tummy. So yeah, thank you very much indeed for that. That was deeply perturbing for several seconds. He's very cute. He's very cute. I have no idea if I can revive his little sort of paw presser thing though. He's definitely got something in there, and that was my Build-A-Bear clue there in his paw. But I have no idea if I can actually resurrect him, because presumably you have to sort of unstitch him or something to get into him to fix him up. But yeah, he's got an official Star Trek logo on his bottom there. So yeah, great stuff. Great stuff. Very, very unique gift, Phil. So thank you for that one. Now, of course, when a strange alien life form like this does turn up on the transporter deck of the Enterprise, you would imagine that their first reaction would be to draw phasers, and that would be not unreasonable. But the second reaction would probably be to reach for their tricorders, of course. Now this I picked up from the Toy Fair in New York just the other weekend, and I'd always had a bit of a sort of hankering after one, but I just never quite sort of went for it, because I have also got the miniature version of it, which you might remember that I showed to you a little while ago, and that was the inner space unfolding tricorder. And in fact, if I just show you this quickly, if I can remember where I left it, in fact it's just here, this is the inner space version of the electronic tricorder, and it is remarkably similar in size and everything else to the electronic version. So it could be very, very easy to get these two sort of mistaken for each other if they're next to each other on the shelf, but you know, that is the way of it. That's the way they went with it. And I do get it, because they are both designed to fit on your belt. They both have belt clips. So you can just attach this and then sort of off you go. So this is 1993 Playmates. I don't have the outer packaging for it, but I think this is rather cool, because when you switch this on, there is a little toggle on the inside of the battery compartment that allows you to switch this light to always on. So it looks like a little sort of star charty, or even actually probably more a terrain map actually. It's more like a terrain map, so like it's scanning the surroundings. So if you flick the little switch inside the battery compartment to always on, whenever the tricorder is on, this will come on. Now, if you are completely unfamiliar with Star Trek, the tricorder is a device that the hero characters typically carry around with them on all the away missions, so they can point it at stuff and have it go bleep 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 bleep, and report back data on their surroundings, the composition of elements that they find, you know, alien life forms, all sorts of stuff like that. So basically it's a very, very useful multi-purpose tool, much like our modern mobile phones are, except it's got all the sort of clever apps preloaded and built into it. Now, obviously this does not do as much as it would do in the series, I'm sorry, but what I realised after a little bit of playing around with it, because obviously I don't have the instructions, so I don't have the packaging, it does do stuff like this. And this. And this. So if you could make that out, it does activate little lights along the side here, and there are these really sort of delicately impressed, well, sort of inbuilt buttons here that activate various sort of, you know, notional functions on the tricorder. But I do think it's quite cool that it does do something. Now, EMRG, I assume, means emergency. I don't know if this does anything, actually. Nope, it doesn't do anything, at least not on my version. Now, in the series, you sort of see people doing all of this sort of stuff and then sort of reporting back. Now, how on earth that was supposed to work at this sort of scale, I have no idea, but this is the sort of size it was in the series. And of course, it now that I think back to it, it was very cleverly done, because all you ever tended to see was this. So you'd see this pointed at stuff, and you'd see them sort of, you know, doing stuff on it, but you wouldn't tend to see the flip side of it like this quite so much. Now, I'm pretty sure they would have taken this from an actual tricorder prop. Now, I don't know if that does anything. No, that doesn't do anything. But I like the fact that it's got, you know, a little bit of something, so you can sort of see that, you know, they were thinking about it as sort of communication stuff in there, image record, forward reverse input arrays, library bank possibly. So this is the TR560 possibly tricorder, Starfleet R&D. There was also a tricorder which I think Playmates also did, which was a medical tricorder, and the medical tricorder is a little bit like the inner space one, so it has sort of an extra sensor. So what you can do is with those, you sort of take a sensor out and then sort of wave it over the patient's extremity that you were interested in, and then you get more data back off the back of that. So, you know, given that Starfleet's mission was primarily scientific and exploration, you know, having this sort of device available to them rather makes perfect sense. It had a sort of incredible ability to sort of plug into stuff and kind of power other stuff, and, you know, all the sort of the normal kind of plot device things you'd expect basically. But I thought it was completely made sense that they would just have a tool like this. And this actually, the first version of this originated in the original series. And interestingly, in the original series, it was a much bigger item. It was more like, strangely, this is how I always think of it. My dad had this really sort of old tape cassette player, and for some reason it came with a speaker built into it. So it was this big you know, mechanical chunk of equipment that had sort of a speaker grill in it, and then but it came in a sort of leather case with a carrying strap, and that was what they had in the original series. It was something that was kind of that size that you sort of carried around on your shoulder, and then Spock would sort of bring that thing out. And of course, in the Next Generation, which is what this is from, what they'd done was they obviously, you know, shrunk down all that functionality into a much smaller and probably far more capable device. So they'd taken that and they'd sort of said, okay, well, what will the next iteration of this be? And this is the next iteration of it. So, and this is the classic way as well, in which it sort of opens. You sort of, I'm sure there was a way you could sort of, if you were clever with it, you could kind of flick it out and sort of, you know, do it really smoothly and quickly, but maybe that just takes a lot of practice. But you can see, you know, the hinge mechanism is very straightforward. So it just goes from being a sort of compact rectangular box to being a slightly, you know, easier to use handheld device with a few more buttons to it. And I'm quite sure that this has been the inspiration for a lot of modern day equipment and devices, and the sort of thing that, you know, designers would actually aspire to. Because a lot of people, you know, a lot of scientists did watch Star Trek, and they thought, you know, wouldn't it be great if? And, you know, we went through that period where modern day mobile phones would flip open, and that's like what the old school Starfleet communicators would do, of course, as well, because they'd flip open. And, you know, all of these things are the sort of those subtle influences, and some not so subtle, that Star Trek has had on, you know, so our own sort of modern innovation and modern path of development, which were all being dreamt of well before we were actually capable of implementing them. But we sort of drove ourselves towards that as being sort of, you know, a nice idea if we could just do it, you know. So I have infinite respect for the likes of Michael Okuda, who came up with stuff like this as sort of future technologies, because obviously it did drive some inspiration in the real world. I mean, I'm still not sure that we actually have anything akin to a medical tricorder as such, but I know that obviously, you know, we have probably more sensors that people can wear and sort of take around with them, and indeed inside them these days. So, you know, that's the sort of thing that's come about from Star Trek. So, yeah, it was just a fun, you know, it's a shame I didn't get a box, because I do like to get boxes for the Playmates items, but they weren't asking a ridiculous amount for it at all. And I just thought, you know what, by the time I've paid for postage on eBay and everything else, this is by far and away the most economical way for me to do it, and it's in nice condition. and the batteries are still working. I'll just show you this little element of the battery compartment I was mentioning, because it's probably worth, even though it looks like it's going to be a really chunky battery, it's actually only 2 AAs. So I'm now, of course, not going to be able to pry these batteries out, which is why I always have a small pokey thing available to me, because it greatly helps in the retrieval of batteries. So you see, it was only because I was swapping the batteries out myself that I really sort of noticed this. So there's this little tiny switch just down here, and if you switch that on, then you get the light kind of always on. If you switch it off, then the light doesn't come on, and that, I guess, conserves your battery power. So entirely up to you which way you want to go, but if you ever get your hands on one of these and you wonder why that isn't lighting up, it might be because that little switch there that you haven't noticed yet is switched to off. So it's certainly worth just sort of checking that point if you do sort of happen to pick one of these up second hand at any point, because it may well not be broken. The odds are it probably isn't. It just needs that little switch flicking to a different position. So just thought that was worth mentioning in case you did happen to want to pick one of these up off the eBay or elsewhere. So it was quite good fun, because when I got home, I was looking for a temporary home for this, and I saw this and I thought, oh my god, I've already got one. And then I realised, no, hang on a minute, I haven't. I'm pretty sure I haven't. I think that's the other one, but they do look virtually identical, because obviously Playmates make both of them, so that's why it momentarily fooled me. But they are very, very similar. They are very, very close. I'm still wanting to put that the wrong way around. It's quite funny, but it hinges out this way. But yeah, it's funny that they did build them quite so similar, but that being said, it's very easy to tell them apart. I actually wonder, does this do... Now that I've done that, I've just noticed that the power on switch, I bet it didn't do anything different, but the power on switch is visible on the tricorder when it's shut. I'm just wondering if Playmates were canny enough in 1993 to make some sort of sound for the opening of the tricorder if you're about to use it. Now I may be crediting them with too much there, but let's just try this as a concept. So switch it on. Okay, nothing happens, but when I open it, does that do something? No. Okay, fair enough. I just thought I'd try that. It just occurred to me that it might be a thing that it did, but obviously the light came on. The light was still switched to its on mode. So interesting, that means that the light, I bet, it's a bit like a fridge door thing, isn't it? I bet that light was on before I opened up the cover. So I guess if you left it in its on mode, unless it's got an auto off, that light would keep burning through your battery. And I bet that's why they included the off switch for it, because you could easily close that, forget to do that bit, and that bit is counterintuitive, because when it's green it's off and when it's red it's on. That's kind of odd. But anyway, that's probably why they included the separate off switch, which is very, very clever, because that way it wouldn't drain the battery, of course, because you couldn't then accidentally leave the light on. Very, very clever, Playmates. I like that as a concept, as a way of thinking. So yes, so it's just a short one, just to say thank you to Phil for my space bear, who I will take suggestions for names. I will take polite suggestions for names, let's put it that way. You know, Trekkie Ted, I don't know, something like that. Things of this nature. I don't know if he's qualified to use a tricorder, but perhaps if he gets perhaps if he sees some tribbles that he needs to scan, when everything's moving at night time, he can just borrow my tricorder there and just self-diagnose or diagnose somebody else. It's always possible. Anything is possible out there once we have boldly gone. So, on that note, I shall leave you there. What have I got coming up next? I have got another enterprise or two to show you yet. Some slight oddities as well. And I've also got a full set of something coming as well, which is quite cool. But they're not with me yet. So I shall leave it that nebulous for the time being, and I will see you for another one next week. Cheers for now.